Good evening and welcome to the TCPalm Editorial Board meeting. Interview candidates in the Port St. Lucie election. I'm Larry Reisman, columnist and community editor, and I'm joined by fellow editorial board members Adam Neal, our editor and news director, Blank Fontenay and Ed Killer, who are columnists, and Adam Zavalgorba, a reader advisory board member from Port St. Lucie. Special thanks to our candidates for meeting with us today and streamlining this process by completing questionnaires ahead of time. Board members have reviewed them, and they can be found at tcpalm.com/elections. At the conclusion of this interview, editorial board members will discuss possibly writing an editorial to recommend a candidate in this race. Blake will open the questioning and open it up to other editorial board members at the end. We might end up having more of a conversation than just a simple Q&A. Our goal is to be completed in 45 minutes or so. We don't have any meetings after this one, so if there are some extra questions, hopefully we'll get a chance to get them in. Because of our time constraints, though, we ask that you keep your answers concise. Right now, I'll turn it over to Blake.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you to the candidates. What we would like to do is alternate and have you take turns with who goes first with each question. And so we'll start alphabetically with Mr. Bernier. One thing I'll just point out, as I mentioned before, our prior to interviews, just for the benefit of the candidates and the readers, if we happen to look away while you're talking, that doesn't mean that we've stopped paying attention to you. It may well mean we're jotting down notes about what you're talking about. So I know that's true of myself and possibly the other board members. So anyway, the first question, Mr. Bernier, if we could start with what would be your biggest priority if you were elected mayor?
Sure. First of all, I want to thank TCPalm for having this forum and thank Shannon for participating. I think when it comes to our biggest priority is to find a way that we can really curb this out of control growth that we're having right now. It's having it's creating a lot of stress on our resources, on our services, and people are noticing it. I'm looking through either social media or I'm getting emails talk about the stress on resources and the services aren't keeping up. And so I think that's the biggest one. As we grow, we can't stop growth. I'm not saying stop growth, but to make sure that we review everything that's affected by this growth, our environment, like I said, our services, and also how it affects everyday people. So I think that's our biggest priority is to really curb this out of control growth into a sustainable, smart, manageable growth that can sustain us for years to come.
Ms. Martin?
Thank you, and thanks for having me here today. I really love this process, and I want to thank EJ also for participating. When it comes to our priorities, we're too big of a city to have one top priority. So continuing to lower our tax rate, managing our growth in a fiscally responsible manner, keeping Port St. Lucie safe, clean, and beautiful, addressing our infrastructure needs, continuing to manage our debt and lower it. These are all things that are really important priorities that we have to continue working on for the next 10, 15, 20, and 50 years.
Okay, thank you. All right. One question about the police department that I'd like to ask, and we'll go back to you, Ms. Martin. What steps should the police department take to maintain the right balance between providing strong law enforcement while also respecting the rights of all its citizens?
Well, our police officers are very, very highly trained. They are very community focused. We have a very strong stratified policing model that is known throughout the country that many other cities come and look to model. The way that our police department is integrated in our community is something that's very important, and I think that's why we have such strong support and respect for our police department. And that community engagement and that way of community policing needs to continue. We're focused on making sure it continues. And I think that's why we are so highly accredited and why the citizens and our police department have such great respect for one another. And in addition to that, we continue to work on issues that many community members have with regard to our forum on race relations and inclusion, making our police department look like our community. We also do that in the fire district as well. And we want to make sure that our entire community continues to be very diverse and integrated.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Bernier, same question.
Sure. You know what? I can honestly say that we have one of the best police departments in the state, the nation. You know, I work with these guys on a day-to-day basis. We go to incidents, traffic accidents, other incidents, domestic incidents. I'm working right alongside these guys and gals, and they do a fantastic job. You know, one of my other hobbies I actually have is I actually work in playing a pipes and drums band. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of our responsibilities is to play at first responder funerals. I understand. I've been to these funerals. I understand what some of these families go through when we have these line of duty deaths. As mayor, that's something that we on my mind all the time. At the same time, I also believe in equal protection under the law. There are things we can do, like having a police department that looks like the community, and also having community review boards that include people in our community, pastors, civil leaders, you know, to really have a good line of communication between the police department and the communities. And so, you know, it's one of these things, having a strong police department that's supported, also protecting the rights of our individuals in our city is not mutually exclusive. And I don't think that has to be a choice. So that's the way how I would look at things as mayor.
Thank you. And I'll stay with you for the first answer on this next question. What, if anything, could the city be doing differently to better manage the COVID epidemic and take steps to reduce the damage from that epidemic?
You know, in my line of work, I have a front row seat to what's going on with COVID in our community. And I'd like to say it's getting better, but it's not. You know, the city has an obligation to protect the citizens, and most of this falls out of their jurisdiction. But what I would say is, as a city council, as mayor, I think it's important to listen to science, listen to the experts, and you know, when they come and say, you know, this is something we need to do to keep our community safe, we listen. We make sure we base our policies off of that information. So if this is the point where, for example, Delta variant or a worse variant comes along, that we have the courage to say, you know what, we need to look at the science, look at the hospitalizations. We have a responsibility to make sure that hospitals aren't overrun. We have a responsibility to make sure that our healthcare professionals are taken care of, our frontline workers. And so I would not, you know, I will make hard choices and push others under the council to make hard choices to protect our community, because that is the most important thing.
Ms. Martin, same question for you, please.
I think it's important to share what we are doing for our community, for those that don't know, because typically this falls under our county with our public health department. And what we have been doing is we've been partnering with our health department, partnering with our county, following all of the updates, following all the updates that come out of the CDC. And we took an extra step in Port St. Lucie to partner with a public-private partnership with Dr. Mark Paymer to create several points of distribution for the vaccine for the people that choose to get the vaccine across the city. We did several of them when the first tranche of COVID came out. When things died down, we had less participation. But once we started hearing from Rob Lord and other community partners from Cleveland Clinic and from St. Lucie Medical, the uptick, we immediately went back to partner through our Emergency Operations Center with Dr. Paymer and started those points of distribution right back up again. We just did one recently at Somerset. We're doing one at Kaiser University. We're also doing one at St. Lucie Catholic Church, and we're going to continue to partner with him until we get back down to levels that are much more sustainable.
Okay, I'll stick with you, Ms. Martin, for a related follow-up. How do you feel about the idea of local mandates and local control for either masking or vaccines?
I believe in home rule 100%. I believe it should be the local officials' decisions, no matter what those decisions are, to be able to make determinations for our community. Do I like the fact that the governor put that mandate in, that taking away our rights to do that? I do not, because again, it is a violation of home rule. And the people in our local community, our local elected officials, are the best ones to make decisions based on what's happening on the ground in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Bernier, same question.
Sure. Home rule is essential. Nobody knows the community better than the elected officials at the local level. One thing I'd like to say too, I would encourage people to, like the CD says, to wear masks in public places. I encourage them to get vaccinated. When it comes to what the governor has done, it's an overreach, to say the least. We elect local officials to make these decisions. And what's the point of even having local elected officials if you're getting directions from Tallahassee directly? So I think it's super important. Local control, when it comes to possible mandates, needs to be made at the local level. So yeah, I do support home rule 100%. And I do think that Tallahassee needs more of a hands-off approach.
Thank you. And I'll start with you on the next question. What is your strategy for bringing more economic development to Port St. Lucie? And are there particular parts of town that you feel need to be more of a priority than others?
So, I think what's important when it comes to the development of our town, we need better paying jobs that have better benefits. And I do think that the east side of the town is getting somewhat neglected. I talked to several business owners over there, and they feel all the focus is on the west side. So, but most importantly, when it comes to bringing in important jobs, how do we do that? Do we repeat what we did in the past and give enormous tax breaks to companies that stay for 2-3 months and then get out of town, and then we're left with the bill, which then the burden is placed on our residents through a huge tax hike? Or do we actually partnership with our local community schools, including IRSC, other private medical, there's other private medical type of vocational companies that provide that training. Most importantly, what companies look for when they come to town, they want to make sure, one, there's a trained workforce. That is that, they're able to hire people. Let's say it's manufacturing. They can hire people and they can put them right into the workforce and be an asset to the company. And secondly, you got to make sure that there's infrastructure for people to get there. So bringing businesses in, we got to get away from what we did in the past. It really left our citizens with the tab. We focus on training, have a trained workforce, and also ways to get to those jobs, either through better pedestrian, bike lanes and sidewalks, complete streets, make sure that we work on our traffic issues as well. That's what companies look for. Companies look for, they want to also, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this as well. We want to make sure that the city and the council are infighting. So companies want to look for a trained workforce and also a county and city area that's working together in harmony and not bickering about impact fees and things like that.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
So Southern Grove is our jobs corridor. We've been working on it for several months now in partnership with all our community partners and especially our Economic Development Council in bringing in major companies to be able to provide jobs for our citizens. Also, as you know, with City Center on the east side, We're going to be taking title to that land very soon. And our plan for our city center is exactly what we did in Southern Grove. We're going to master plan that entire area. We're going to bring in the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, who then brings in economists from around the country, just like we did in Southern Grove, and takes a look at the market, takes a look at what the east side could bear as far as what that market looks like, whether it's a lifestyle entertainment center, whether it's mixed use, whether it's some type of distribution on those 22 parcels that we have out there. So we're going to pretty much mirror what we did in Southern Grove. We're actively looking and working with several groups. We have a joint venture partner in Southern Grove, Mr. Tamboni, to bring in companies because of his knowledge and experience. We've also been super successful, as you have seen, with getting Amazon, with Cheney Brothers, with Tamco, Oculus, Excel, because the promise years ago to our residents was, this is this 4-mile stretch of land that we have that's very, very rare in the state of Florida. And these are our opportunities to be able to bring in companies and provide good paying jobs. Now, we could bring up the issues of the past with regard to city paying for private development, but that stopped a long time ago. Many years ago, our council, after we've suffered from the Great Recession and realized what was done and what we can no longer do and should no longer do, we put policies in effect to no longer allow that. What is allowed now is what the voters have approved, which is tax abatement. And in all of our recent economic development projects, we have not just gone to straight 10 years of tax abatement like was done before. We said that we're going to do it on a sliding scale, and to make sure that in order for you to continue to get those funds and get that job growth grant through the state in cooperation with the city and the county, which, by the way, we have worked very well with our county partners on. We're going to make sure that you provide those jobs. If you don't provide those jobs, then you're no longer going to get the grant. So we have teeth in that, and we're going to continue to follow it because it's important to learn from the past and not create more mistakes. And we're not going to do that.
Okay. Thank you. I would like you to also tackle the next question first, and that is, what can be done to encourage more people to switch from septic tanks to the city sewer system?
I am so glad that you brought that up, because our water quality issues are so important in Port St. Lucie. We feel it's very important to do our part, and we've been the vanguard in our region since 2009 when we started our EWIP project. Septic to sewer, what we've done is we did a microbial tracking study, and we partnered with FAU Harbor Branch to look at area hotspots around our river to see where there was effluent and bacteria going into the river. This study was done over a multi-year period, and when we found out the first phase was done and we had the hotspots, we knew that we had to start addressing it. And so then we continued on with our second phase, and we started a voluntary program where we reached out to our citizens, we upped our budget, and we said, hey, if the city of Port St. Lucie can help you voluntarily subsidize the cost of switching over to septic to sewer, would you be willing to do that? So far in our program, and we just started this within the last year of going through this program, the subsidy program, we have had over 118 people sign up and are now on the waiting list to convert over, because we know how important it is. We continue to ask our legislative delegation and our state partners for funding. We are constantly working with South Florida Water Management Agreement on this issue, and we're going to continue working on it because we know how important it is. The more people we can get hooked up to sewer on that voluntary basis, the better. And we also have the 10-year interest-free loan as well, which has been an ongoing program for many years.
Thank you. Mr. Bernier? Sure. I'm going to quickly revisit something real quick about, you mentioned tax abatements. we got to also make sure that we support the businesses that are already here and not just try to use those tax abatements to lure companies that aren't here yet. We don't even know if they'll stay and how viable they'll be. We have plenty of businesses here in Port St. Lucie that are viable, that deserve the same breaks that businesses aren't in here yet. When it comes to septic, we're not going to solve a water quality issue until we actually solve the root cause, which is nutrients in our water. At the city level, we can talk forever about changing people over from septic to sewer. And my opponent's been in a position for 10 years, and we're still talking about doing it. It's about time we actually put things from paper to pavement. Until we actually control the nutrient runoff into our waters, we're going to have the same issue year after year. So, and we have a huge infrastructure bill coming through Washington. I'm pretty sure they're going to have another bill after that that's going to help. That's going to focus on environmental issues. And so we need to make sure we overturn every rock to make sure we get the state and federal support through grants, whatever the case may be, to help people turn from septic to sewer. And we got to do it as soon as possible because the water quality is not getting any better.
Thank you. I'll start with you on the next question. What are some of the city's biggest infrastructure needs? And are there, again, particular areas of town that you feel like are underserved and need a little more help than other parts?
Was that directed towards me?
Yes.
Okay, sure. Infrastructure. I call it community infrastructure. Some people call it complete streets. But we have to work at getting pedestrian-friendly infrastructure down on the pavement. We've been talking about it for years and years. They're finally starting to get to it, but there's still plenty of areas that are being neglected. When I go to work in the morning and I drive my truck to work, I see tons of kids that are sitting in the street waiting for the bus. Unfortunately, in the past 13 years, I've been to incidents where they've gotten hit by cars, and it's tragic. We got to make sure that we provide the safe infrastructure that our residents deserve. So absolutely, sidewalks, streetlights in the winter months when kids are going to school, they're out in the dark. So yeah, we got to make sure that we provide safe infrastructure. I call it community infrastructure. Some people call it complete streets, but we really got to really press the accelerator in that because it's been overdue for years and years.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Yeah, I just want to circle back for a second. So I find it interesting that my opponent says we need to start doing something with regard to septic to sewer. We are doing something, as I just described. I mean, in order to start doing something, got to make sure you have the scientific evidence and the data and the analysis to back up what you're doing in order to make sure that it's justifiable to our taxpayers, because we're putting more money in the budget for that. So you can't just do it on a whim, or you can't just say, oh, I think I'm going to do it. You have to have all the data and analysis to back up in order to make those decisions, in order to do it. And that's exactly what I've been doing. As far as our infrastructure, we have an overarching strategic plan that addresses all of our needs that are citizen driven. And a majority of those needs revolve around our infrastructure. We have a stormwater master plan that addresses infrastructure that we just completed this year. We have a 10-year sidewalk master plan that at the rate we're going, we're going to get that done in 8 years. We have a road repaving master plan that has been in effect for a few years now, and it is a 10-year plan as well. And every year with the funding available, leveraging every resource we possibly can get, whether it be state grants through South Florida Water Management, DEP, FIND, all these agencies we constantly work and partner with in order to be able and have projects ready to go, because we know when we do that, we are more apt to be able to get those grants. And we've been very successful in doing so. As far as infrastructure in Southern Grove, we've gotten 2 job growth grants in the last 2 years to a total of almost $7 million to help us provide infrastructure. Also, with the American Recovery Funds of the $24 million that we're getting, we're going to be able to put in more water and sewer infrastructure throughout the city. address issues with culverts, and we're doing it all. And every plan that we have is getting implemented. There are projects being worked across this entire city every single day. And we update those plans on a quarterly basis and make sure that they're being implemented. And we get reports from our staff to make sure that those implementations are happening. And anyone who wants to look at our strategic plan or see any of the projects that are being worked on or where we are on our dashboard, because we have a strategic planning dashboard coming out very soon, which addresses the who, what, when, where, and why for every single project in our strategic plan and all of our goals. That's going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So every citizen in the city can go online and will be able to access every single thing that we're doing. Because we're doing that because we want to make sure that we continue our public engagement processes and that our citizens know and we're accountable to our citizens for what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. And I will stay with you for this next question. What specific areas of the budget do you feel there could be cost reductions, if any?
So our budget is lean and mean. Our city manager takes great strides in being very conservative in our budget. Some of the things that we do to make sure that we are being accountable to our citizens is when it comes to employees and our different departments asking for budget requests for employees, we're making sure that they go through a very rigorous process in order to justify what those needs are. So we have gone from the days of having a budget that has been really questionable and not accountable to our citizens. We look at these things on a regular basis. It's not something that you just hone in on once every 3 to 5 years. This is looked at throughout the entire year, through multiple levels of our organization, and we're constantly looking to make sure that we're leaning mean, we're providing the right services, the level of services to our citizens, and we're also lowering our tax rate every year and giving back to our citizens.
Okay, Mr. Bernier, specific areas of the budget that you would cut?
Sure. When it comes to budget cuts, you got to be real careful. What I would do is assemble the department heads and see what is available, what is making sense, what isn't making sense, what is a money waster, what is valuable, and you go from there. But it's easy to have no issues with the budget when our citizens are being overtaxed. And I've been talking to a lot of people when I go door to door, and the two things I hear about is infrastructure and the taxes are too high. I know my opponent talks about how they've been cutting taxes for the past 6 years, but what she doesn't really forget, or she forgets to mention, is that in 2015, when there was a huge hole in the budget based on some of the things they did before that, what they did is they levied or they raised the millage by one whole mill. And so ends up the average taxpayer, that's 18% tax hike, 18%. And so ever since then, the past 6 years, they've been lowering it by 0.1%. Now this year they upped it to 0.28, close to 0.3. And so we're going to get back to where we were before that tax hike. But the truth is they raised taxes more than they had to. And then since then, they've been giving people their money back in little tiny increments and then act like they're doing them a favor. And that's just not, I don't think it's a responsible way to tackle your taxes and budgets.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question and then open this up to some of our other editorial board members. And again, let's start with you, Mr. Bernier. Waste Pro, tell us some ways that service could be improved.
Well, Waste Pro is a perfect example of the lack of vision as in terms of watching our population grow. Port St. Lucie's population hasn't been growing just for the past 2 years. It's been growing since the 90s. It sped up in the early 2000s. It waned a little bit during the recession. It's been really growing a lot again in the last about 5-6 years. And the services have not been able to keep up. That's a huge issue. You know, there was no contingency plans. There's no resiliency plans when it comes to what happens when we have a hurricane. And by the way, I've been doing my research. This is not a new issue. I remember reading an article in 2019, and they were talking about issues with Waste Pro. And there you go. It goes to the point where we're not having a contingency plan to deal with that. Now, how do we do that? That's the question. Do we, do we have, they had an issue with a couple of trucks that were out of service due to a fire. Does the city have a backup truck that we charge Waste Pro to use, or a couple? Do we, if workers are the shortage, do we have a couple? Do we have city workers jump on a truck and charge Waste Pro, or So there's several things. The bottom line is that it's not a new issue. This was brought up in 2019. It's brought up again, so you can't solely blame the pandemic. And the bottom line is when they did the contract, they didn't really plan for the future, and that's why we're having an issue now.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
So I just want to backtrack for 1 second. I find it interesting that my opponent talks about the taxes, talks about the 1 mil increase that we had to do back in 2015, and how we're only been able to give back in increments, and it doesn't seem like that it's enough for him. Well, what I would say to that is because he hasn't been there. He hasn't been on the city council. He hasn't been working a budget. He doesn't have the experience that I have had looking at how to balance all of our resources that we have, balance all of our priorities that we have, rather, and make sure that we're addressing the needs, the vast amount of needs for our growing community. So yes, have we done it in increments? Yes, and we've promised our citizens that. We promised our citizens when we did that 1 mil increase back then that we're doing this now. It's a tough decision, but we're making the hard decision, but we're going to continue to give back to you every year until we get back down to that level. And this year we were finally able, and I'm proud to say we were finally able to surpass that level. And we're going to continue to do that because that's the right thing to do. With regard to Waste Pro, this is a very tough issue that we've been dealing with for many months now. There's a worker shortage across the country. We have them dealing with problems with COVID. We've had several resurgences there, and we've had trucks go down. They're having trouble getting trucks from the manufacturers as it relates to getting more trucks in and automated trucks and different types of things that they need. And is it getting old? Absolutely. Is it super frustrating? Absolutely. But we're continuing to address it by finding them through our contract. And we're actually looking at how we're going to be utilizing those fines right now. One of the ways that we're looking at utilizing those fines is we've asked them to bring in a third-party hauler to deal with the yard waste so they can deal with the solid waste issues and the recycling issues. And they're actively looking for those now, because if they don't find them, then we have told them that they had 10 days to do it. And if they don't, that we're going to take it upon ourselves, continue to withholding money from what we pay them. We're going to use those fines to make sure that we can provide the service that's necessary. It's not a simple issue. And for those to say, hey, fire Waste Pro and get somebody new, what they don't realize is that, one, our rate that we pay is significantly less on an annual rate than most major cities in the state of Florida. We did benchmarking and looking at what those rates are, and most of the cities are over $100 more a year at least for providing those services that the Waste Pro is currently providing. It would take 10 to 15 months to get a new waste hauler in. And on top of that, there's only one other waste hauler in the entire state that can handle a city of our size. And they're bogged down and they're having the same problems in other counties that Waste Pro is having. So I understand the frustrations. I deal with it every day. We are looking at every single option that we have. We put out some bulk waste sites. We have 4 different ones to help people. And if they so choose to to give them an option, if they so choose to bring their yard waste or any other waste that they have. So we're looking at every single option that we possibly can and we are doing everything we can to push them to improve their service. And we're going to continue to do that. We do have a solid waste consultant as well that we used to negotiate the last contract with them, which took over a year to negotiate because that's how long it takes. And plus we had to address the county landfill as well. So even though it's frustrating, even though we're all losing patience, I am losing patience as well. I just sent 2 emails out this morning to the COO, who actually came to one of our council meetings and addressed the issue. He put forth a letter of what he's going to do in order to address the issues with job fairs that they're holding every week. I asked him today in my email to him that I wanted an update from the letter a month ago about what the outcomes are and how successful they have been, and that I requested one every month for the next several months until they start improving their service. So at every level of our city government, we are doing everything we can to push them, and we are also looking at other options for the future.
Thank you. I'd like to open this up for the other editorial board members. I know that they have some questions as well. So Larry or any of you that would like to chime in, please go ahead.
Sure, I'll go first. I guess we start with Ms. Martin. Can you please give me an example of a time when you faced an ethical challenge? How did you resolve it?
There was a time where I had somebody that wanted to meet with me, and I was in the middle of an election. It wasn't this election, it was a prior one. And they said that they wanted to give me a campaign donation. But in order to get that campaign donation, that I had to meet with them. And I turned them down flat and said, absolutely not. That will never happen, and we will never meet. So when I was faced with that, I made sure to do the right thing, because no one ever is going to try to buy me to get to sit down and have a meeting with them.
Thank you, Mr. Bernier.
Sure. I remember years ago when I was working on an ambulance, and I had a friend of mine from years back. I went through a messy divorce, and he was splitting his time with his kids. It was a hard situation. Fast forward a year or two, I went on a call, and I guess that person, I don't want to say his or her, I don't want to give anything away. That person's ex, I guess, went down the wrong path in life, and the kids were with her. And I remember we responded to an emergency, and it was not a good situation, and the kids were there, but I couldn't call my friend because it was a HIPAA violation. And so seeing his kids in that situation, it took every ounce of me to not call him. But it was a law, and it's there for a reason. And so I had to just forget about the whole situation. It was very difficult.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to anybody else on the editorial board that has a question.
I'll go ahead. I guess we'll start with you, Mr. Bernier. About 12 miles of the St. Lucie River goes through the middle of Port St. Lucie. I know that the city has already been working on a lot of stormwater projects right now. In fact, I see one over at Floresta that's been underway for a while now, and it's nearing completion. I know you mentioned in your comments that you'd sent to us about preserving our waterways and also some of the wild lands we have. What is your plan for doing that, or for making sure that our waters stay clean and how they impact the Indian River Lagoon?
Sure. I tell you what, one of the best ways we can help restore runoff and runoff into our waterways is to not pave over everything. And with this, with the growth, that's the direction we're heading. So make sure that we Also, make sure we enforce the current rules on the books. You know, a lot of people, I mean, most people I talk to don't even know that there's months that you're not supposed to fertilize your yard. And so make sure that we enforce that, because in the summertime, when people fertilize their yards, it's going to rain 2-3 hours later, and that runoff is going to take all those nutrients right into the water. So make sure we enforce the rules on the books. Make sure we don't pave over everything, and also monitor our water quality. The septic tank issue is a huge deal. I am very sensitive to the fact that some people just can't, out of their pocket, convert. So we got to find every single way to make sure that we overturn every rock, whatever we got to do to find that money to convert, because the cost of conversion is far cheaper than the cost of having another 2018. We had tons of fish kills, and the water quality was so poor that people couldn't even get near the water that had respiratory issues. So we got to prioritize. And you go, okay, how much is going to, not just how much is going to cost, but how much is the cost of doing nothing? Or how much is the cost to say we're going to do something, even though we did nothing in the past 10 years? So, you know, those are things we're going to look at, especially when it comes to our water quality.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, how would you respond to that question?
So everything we do with regard to stormwater relates to, in some way, to water quality. We have a 10-year stormwater master plan, and majority of those projects have water quality components. We have a McCarty Ranch water quality project. We are in the 3rd phase of that right now. We're getting ready to do the ribbon cutting on that very soon. That is going to be a 7-phase project. We've been very fortunate to levy our resources and to be able to apply for and get state grants. We have the, as you mentioned, the largest baffle box going in on the Floresta Drive project, the largest one in the country, actually, and we were able to get a grant on that. We have Hog Pen Slough, where we got a grant, and we're going to be partnering with our county on that. The Sagamore Water Treatment Basin. We have several other projects. There's so many to name. And it will continue to be, water quality will continue to be at the forefront of what we do with regard to our drainage as well, because we know how important it is to make sure that our river and our lagoon and all of our estuaries get back to where they need to be. And although we can't do it all and we can't fix it all, we want to make sure that we continue to be the vanguard and continue to do our part.
Thank you.
I'll go next with a question, and it's on diversity. PSL is a very diverse city, probably one of the most, if not the most diverse on the Treasure Coast. In fact, we just saw some census data being released last week that showed there's a continual growth of diverse groups in the city, especially with Hispanics. So what I'm going to ask each of you is, if elected, what, if anything, would you do to address race and equity within the city? And Shannon, I believe you'll be first.
Thanks. So we've been working on this issue for a long time. I'm really happy to say that a recent article came out from the Christian Science Monitor, where they took a look at 113 cities, larger cities across the United States. And out of those 113 cities, our city in Colorado Springs were known to be the most integrated cities in the entire country. In 2016, we started a forum of race relation and inclusion, because we want to make sure with all the stuff that's going on across the country that we're addressing the needs of our community. So we brought many community leaders together, different church groups, and we want to have that community conversation about what we can do to be better, what we can continue to do to diversify, and we're actively engaging on that process on a yearly basis. I go out to groups, many groups, and speak to them and hear their ideas and work on what we need to do in order to make everyone feel more comfortable and happy to live here, because quality of life is so important. Our police department also just got a grant recently for the model traffic stop to address issues, to make sure we're giving proper training out, and we're talking to different groups about model traffic stops. We also go out to our Boys and Girls Club, with our fire district does it, and our police department, to try to encourage kids who are underserved to hey, this is what you can do in life. You can be a police officer, you can be a firefighter. All these opportunities are there for you, and we're going to continue to do that. We do trainings inside City Hall. Our police department is also big on de-escalation training. They train very hard for that several times throughout the year. So this is a continued effort to continue to keep our city great and to continue working on these issues. And it's very, very important, and we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you, Shannon. EJ?
Sure. And real quickly, I'm just going to visit on the last question when it talks about, our environment and waterways. McCarty Ranch is a great project. It's a water farming project. And so I would support continuing that, but that's not the biggest solution to our issue. All the other issues things you talked about, there's a continuing theme, things that we're going to do. And we've had a lot of time to do it. Waterways were just as bad 10 years ago as they are today. I want to say that, as mayor, I would focus on that on day one and not just when there's an election coming up. When it comes to, our issue of race in our city, I'm proud to say that Port St. Lucie is one of those cities where we don't have a lot of issues that some other cities have. And that's because we have some great people live here, a great diverse population that live here. That work here, and they have the same worries as anybody else does, the same worries and hopes. And so I think to build on that, as I said earlier, to make sure we have a police department that looks like the community they serve, and make sure that we fund our police department correctly, make sure they have the funding for the training, make sure they have the funding, whatever they need to make sure that they have the tools to de-escalate, to train, to make sure that we don't have some of the issues that some other cities have, and also have a community board. I'm a strong believer in having a community board where civic leaders and people from different areas of the city can be on this board and talk about the issues of race. So absolutely, it's a huge well, not issue because it's not in Port St. Lucie, but it's something that we need to work on all the time.
Thank you.
Other questions from other board members?
Yes. So, as you both know, there are 4 city council chairs. Do you feel that the current city council model we have expresses and represents everyone in our community? And what changes to city government do you think need to be made? And EJ, you're up first.
Sure. A lot of our council people on the council are pretty new. There's a couple that are pretty new. I think they've done a good job so far. I think there are some improvements, making sure that our growth doesn't spiral out of control like it is. But overall, I think, they have I think their heart's in the right place. I disagree with some of the things that they're doing, but that's okay. That's why we have elections, and want to make sure that in the mayor spot we have somebody who's there that's going to listen to the people, which I have. I've been talking to people, but the issues that bother them, and I'm not going to be beholden to outside developers that fund my opponent's campaign. I haven't taken $1 from them, and I'm not going to. Because the issues that really affect the people of our city are what are important, not exactly these outside interests that want to slice up our city.
Okay, Shannon.
So we have a 5-member city council that's very representative of our districts. And, as we continue to grow, we're going to have to look to the future and see if we need to expand the city council. We're going to have those conversations. We'll be having an upcoming charter review committee next year. We're going to have to take the census numbers and take a look at the differences in redistricting and seeing where the numbers lie. I find it interesting that my opponent wants to reference my campaign financing. I am supported very much so by a huge cross-section of the community, whether it be individuals or businesses or the development community. And I would challenge my opponent to show on record one time where I have compromised my beliefs in doing the right thing for the citizens of Port St. Lucie to benefit developers. I really would do that because my record clearly shows that first and foremost, my entire focus is on all of our citizens and doing what's in the best interest of the residents of Port St. Lucie. That is why we have such a strong public engagement process. That is why we've won consistently for 2 years in a row the Voice of the People Award, because we want to make sure, and I particularly want to make sure, that I'm continuing to listen to all of our residents to do what's in their best interest. Everything we do is tied to what our citizens want and need, and I've been doing it, and I'm going to continue to do it.
All right, thank you.
Well, we are a little bit past our 45 minutes of time. Larry, would you like to handle the closing statements? See if the candidates have any final words they want to share with us?
Sure. Maybe you can take 30 seconds or so, I guess starting with Miss Martin, to just wrap up where we are today. We appreciate your coming on. Any last comments?
I just want to thank you again, the entire board, for hosting this forum, and I want to thank the public for participating. I truly love our city. I have been working full-time since 2010 to make sure that I am representing the citizens of Port St. Lucie. This is not a part-time job. This is something that you have to be 100% dedicated to and be able to answer the call of the citizens on nights, weekends, even during family vacations, and I am so committed to doing that. And I would like to invite anyone to take a look at my website to see my record and to see what I've done at www.martinforpslmayor.com. And I am so passionate about Port St. Lucie. I love serving you, and I humbly ask for your vote on September 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernier?
Sure. Once again, I want to thank the TCPalm for having this forum. I think it's super important that people in our community hear from our elected officials and the candidates. I also want to thank Shannon for participating in the forum. I think it's a great exercise of democracy. The people of Port St. Lucie had a really important decision this September. My opponent is talking about plans on top of plans that apparently we waited 10 years to start. But the problem with Port St. Lucie has never been plans. GDC came in the late 80s and early 90s with plans. The issue is that it's lack of vision. And I think my opponent lacks that vision as well. My vision is that we embrace smart, sustainable growth. That means as we grow, we take into account every single thing that is affected by that growth. This includes the impact on our environment and runoff and our estuaries. Make sure the impact on our services, including Waste Pro and other services, and those are we're suffering. And the impact on our quality of life. I've heard several times about the 7th largest city in Florida. When people moved to Port St. Lucie, they didn't move here because it was the 7th largest city in Florida. They moved here because there's a certain quality of life that's unique to our area. And we're going in a direction we could lose that. My vision includes a vibrant environmental sector for ecotourism, because when people take part in the environment, they want to protect the environment. My vision includes a vibrant downtown, which we didn't really talk about tonight, but a vibrant downtown that is a cultural centerpiece of Port St. Lucie. When you talk about Fort Pierce, or you mention Fort Pierce, a lot of times the first thing that comes to your mind is their downtown. You talk about Stewart, the first thing that comes to your mind is downtown. And there's an idea that maybe we could just have several different areas, but people just don't want extra strip malls and chain restaurants. What they really want is a center for people to go. We have hardworking people in Port St. Lucie, and I think it's about time they spend their money in our city and support local jobs. There's so many things that we need to do, and I think it's time that we have a mayor with a vision, that with unified with the council that can lead in a direction. So what I would say is we can do all those things together: sustainable growth, protect our environment, a viable downtown that unifies the city, and we can do that. And I think I'm the person for the job, and to take us in the right direction. I appreciate if you would vote for me. You can go to my website. It's ej4psl.com, and you can find out about our campaign and get involved if you want to.
Well, thank you both for joining us tonight on behalf of the TCPalm Editorial Board. Again, we thank you, and we hope that anybody watching tonight can continue to view coverage of the election on TCPalm.com. You can watch a replay of this or any of the council meetings that we had as well. And good luck in the election.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Take
Thanks
care
so
now.
much.